Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. Also, please note, it may appear this is a pimple, but it is not. It is the start of my unicorn horn. I will be growing it very long, and I will use it to impale ruffians, bad people. I'll ram you. I don't know. We have a question from someone who will definitely not value my answer now that he just said that insane thing. And that question reads like this. YouTube user Sophia asked us, Vince, in a post-trial verdict, can the employer defendant business immediately file for bankruptcy to avoid payment and collectability? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. If the situation, like the financial circumstances of the business, meet with the criteria required to go bankrupt, right? So you can't have like a well-to-do business with assets that like shifts all its assets to some other entity. It just goes bankrupt. That's probably not going to work out. If there's responsible representation, prosecuting your case for you and collecting and all those things, it's not that simple. But if the business is actually on hard times, like if they can reliably and transparently show that they can't pay, or that this verdict pushes them into bankruptcy, or that they just can't be a going concern anymore because of the finances of the business, then yes, they can absolutely go bankrupt and it is very likely you receive pennies on the dollar. This is a real consideration when employment attorneys decide to take a case or not, right? Like sometimes you see a business and you're like, yeah, so I think I could probably win you. We'll call it a mill, win you a mill, right? And this whole business is probably worth 200 grand. So probably not going to collect that mill. That's a reality, right? And then a responsible employment attorney would say things like, hey, we got a lot of discovery here on the finances of the business. There's not a significant insurance policy in play here. We're at risk of not collecting, like pretty seriously. And that risk gets worse the longer we litigate because they're paying for their attorneys by the hour. So you have a great case. I believe in you. I believe in your case. I believe you were wronged. I believe I can win this trial for you. The settlement offer you have right now, though, it's probably more than you'd actually collect if you went all the way to trial and won. Because this business can't pay. They're not going to be there come May when your trial's over. They're going to be gone. Not every attorney does that. Not every attorney thinks about that, which is always really weird to me because we're like paying out of pocket often for these expenses, right? Just like eating away cash into this litigation. And I've talked to plenty of attorneys who are like, no, you can't think like that. I'm sorry. I thought your job and my job was to put the client first. And if the client can't collect, then you getting a flashy verdict and doing press on your big ass verdict has a zero value for your client, right? You know what has value for your client? Getting the most you can possibly get out of a business that might go under. That's the value for the client. And listen, the client gets to tell you yes or no, right? You can't be like, listen, you got to take this. You got to take this because we probably can't collect more. The client can say no. The client can say, oh, it's the principal thing. I want to go to trial, like this and that. It's within reason, right? They can't ask you to do a trial when there's no chance of collecting. No attorney's going to do that. And I don't think many retainer agreements in this industry are going to require an attorney to do that. But the point here is you just unilaterally not paying attention to whether or not you can collect that verdict is not like a higher calling. You're not like, fight it to the end no matter what. No, you're leaving a part of the puzzle out. You're leaving a piece of the toolbox at home. Like you're not making a decision or a recommendation to your client based on a totality of the circumstances, right? You need to think about this. And further, it's also possible that a company might appeal a verdict, Sophia, right? So let's say you get a verdict at judgment and you're post judgment, and the company might come to you and say, hey, I'm going to file an appeal on your verdict. We think it's going to take 2 to 4 years to play out. So like, even if you collect this money, you're not going to collect it for 2 to 4 years. Very likely. Because we're going to fight this out in the appeal. That's another issue you're dealing with, Sophia. Like it's There's a lot of reasons why cases tend so overwhelming to settle in this industry, and they're not all because employers are afraid of juries, right? Juries go either way. You can't guess what a jury might do, but further than that, further than the wild risk of a jury trial, how long are you going to wait to collect? How much are you going to collect? Is the company go bankrupt? Are you going to get anything? There's a lot to these cases to think about, and I know that can be disheartening. It shouldn't be. Like most companies, most defendants are not going to go bankrupt. Now, listen, it's worth noting that I believe the bankruptcy filing rate for corporate bankruptcy in the Southern District of New York went up 71% year over year from last year to this year. 71% more corporate bankruptcies year over year. And it's also worth noting, not trying to scare you, but it's worth noting, I would say that our firm lost, not our clients, but I think our firm in 2021 may have lost 7 figures to bankruptcy. That's loose math. Don't quote me on that. That's my recollection of a very tense meeting that took place during the pandy when, businesses were going bankrupt left and right. And listen, not too many bars and restaurants survived, So right off the bat, that's a whole swath of cases because there's a lot of sexual harassment cases in bars and restaurants that are very valuable, right? But when they can't earn any money and they're getting sued, they just go, poof, they go under. And the owners are often not large entities or wealthy individuals. Often bar and restaurant owners are people who had a couple $100,000, started a bar or restaurant. And that was their livelihood. And then when everything went under, they don't have a lot left, right? When you just decide, yeah, you can't open for 2 years, there's not a lot left of those businesses, right? So I'm talking a lot when the simple answer is there's a lot to think about on this topic. And yes, this can happen. This can happen. And I'm not telling you, we lost money to bankruptcy so you can play the world's tiniest violin for me. What I'm telling you is it happens. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens more often than other times, right? When the economy's great, people take out a loan. When interest rates are low, people take out a loan. They'll pay you because they'll believe their business is worth it and they're going to pay off the loan and they get to carry on. When interest rates are insane and inflation is out of sight and a grocery bill for a family of 4 is like $350 a week, yeah, they might go bankrupt, right? If gasoline is $200 a barrel for crude next year, like JP Morgan says it's going to be, yeah, there's going to be more bankruptcy. And that's going to be something you have to think about that much more often. Now, don't guess, right? There's a lot you can learn in discovery. There's a lot you can learn in mediation. And also, sometimes you can hire various professionals to figure out the assets of a company, right? It's not a perfect investigation, right? But you might need to do that, right? If I'm sitting here and my client's like, I want to take this, we'll call it $500,000. I want to take this $500,000 because I'm worried this company's going to go bankrupt. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, but I think we could win you $2 million. Like, let's do it. Like, let's roll the dice. And my client says, yeah, but how can I risk that? Like, I know a little bit of the finances of this place, and I don't know if they're going to be there to pay. Fair question. To the investigators, right? Like, I should go take money out of my wallet and see if we can figure out, could they pay? Is the risk worth it? Does it make sense to take that risk? And that's the service you provide your client, both because that's the right thing to do. You owe that client a duty of loyalty, right? But also, further, you would like to see that case go to trial. You think you could take a swing and try to do better than that $500,000 in this hypothetical, right? Not in any way representing I win anyone $500,000 or anything like that, right? Just in this hypothetical, and you're given this advice, and you sit there and you think about the advice you're given, and you're like, I don't know. This $500,000 could be fairly life-changing for this person, and I'm urging them to risk it all, Well, maybe the least I could do is pay some professionals to see if they can figure out if my advice makes sense in the current financial landscape that this company's facing, right? So that's something you can do. Like, and if you're having these conversations with your attorney, Sophia, like, listen, tell me why. Tell me why you think I should take this. Tell me why you think they might go bankrupt. Or conversely, tell me why you think they won't. Tell me why you're telling me to risk trial, right? These are conversations. The why matters. The why matters. And a key thing you're gonna see in this channel, people on this channel, the viewers, they really zero in on the idea of, case flipping attorneys. And that's real. I talk about that a lot. There's a lot of crappy attorneys who flip cases, right? And it's easy to flip cases. It's easy to settle a case for 20 grand after 2 hours and pocket like $8,000. There's a lot of attorneys who want to do that without actually working the case. They make $8,000 after 2 hours. Guess what? They just made $4,000 an hour. They're thrilled. They're so happy. They maximize the value of the case? No. Did they do right by the client? I would say probably not most of the time. Did they get a great return on their investment and their time? They sure did, and some firms value that more. Now, that is all true. But also, sometimes the advice has to be, you should settle this case for 20 grand or 40 grand or whatever it is, right? There's cases, for a variety of reasons, should be settled. And the difference between the case flipper and the attorney who's giving you good advice is the ability to answer why. Why do you think I should take this settlement? Why do you think I shouldn't? Why do you think we should hold out for another week? Why do you think bankruptcy is or is not an issue? And let them answer you. And if the answer is, because I said so, bad attorney. If the answer is, okay, so here's the thing. We've been doing some digging. And their last 2 rounds of funding fell through. They're not going to be valid. And if this litigation's ongoing, they're not going to get a third. And the IP's got no value and, this, that, right? Like, sounds like good advice. Sounds like a well thought out opinion on that attorney's part. Does that mean you have to take it? No. You're the client. You're in the driver's seat. You're the decider, as George Bush Jr., who is probably a war criminal, would say. I'm the decider, right? Like that's his thing. The only great thing he ever did. He said that. It was amazing. It's a great way to respond to people who are like, you need to do what I'm telling you to do. What you have to understand is, I'm the decider. It's just the greatest moment of his entire presidency, which was not a great presidency, in my opinion. I got to pull it back a little today. Just bring it in. We're getting a little far afield here. So, Sophia, I would urge you, if you're in a conversation with your attorney about collectability or, whether you should take something or not take something, just switch into that 4-year-old mode. Why? Why? Okay, but why? Oh, yeah? Why? Okay, and then why? Well, why would they do that? Why do you think that? What makes you give that advice? Why not this advice? And a well-reasoned, data-driven response will probably reflect that someone's not trying to flip your case. Will probably reflect that someone has thought long and hard about how to do right by you, and they're giving the advice they think is correct. Doesn't mean they're correct. We're all wrong. Like, I've told clients to settle cases. I was like, there's no way you're going to win this at trial. I don't believe for a second you're going to win this at trial. Like, you cannot testify this and that. And they've gone on to do well at trial. Right? Was I wrong? I was incorrect. Did I give the advice that I believe was accurate and best suited to this client? Yeah. And do I think that my advice, if we ran that trial 10 times, would be correct 8 of those times? I do. I really do. But it doesn't mean I'm infallible. It doesn't mean somebody can't have a good day. Or an attorney on the other side couldn't have a bad day. And the trial goes amazing, right? Like, there's no guarantees. These are not simple binary decisions. It's not yes, no. There's a spectrum of infinite possibilities, and we think this range of possibilities is the most likely outcome. So we think you ought to do this. It's a lot of educated guessing. And it can result in a good recommendation, and it can be a very well-reasoned recommendation. But it'll never be perfect. That's why you are the decider, right? But Sophia, I hope this conversation for 15 minutes was useful. I hope it helps you in your decision if you're wrestling with the idea of settling versus not settling with a company that could go bankrupt. I know that's something I get calls about all the time. My attorney says this company is going to go bankrupt and I got to take this money. And I usually just have the conversation. But recently we hit probably capacity on having that conversation. Like I couldn't anymore. And it was not, without disclosing any identifying characteristics or any confidence of any kind. Person was like, yeah, but if I hire you, you can beat the bankruptcy, right? And it's like, no, I'm not magic. You can't wring water from a stone. A bankrupt company, you are getting pennies on the dollar. And frankly, if you've got a judgment against a bankrupt company, hire a bankruptcy attorney. Don't hire me. The bankruptcy attorney will take whatever judgment you've got and do the best they can to rip some pieces of flesh off that dying entity that is the business you have a judgment against and get you what they can, right? Anyways, if this was helpful, if this was a framework for some things to think about when dealing with the question as to whether or not your defendant, your employer, will go bankrupt before you can collect, I hope it was helpful. I really do. And if it was, like, subscribe, comment down below. Helps me to help more people just like you. Take care, everybody.